I'm Spencer Mazyck, and joining me now for an inside perspective into Disney's $4 billion acquisition of Lucasfilm is Christopher Kit Kaufman. He is a partner at Latham Watkins, whose practice includes mergers and acquisitions, corporate finance, and corporate governance. His team advised Lucasfilm in this deal. Welcome, Kit. Thank you for joining us today.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
So before we talk about the deal, I understand that you've known George Lucas for quite some time now. Can you tell us, how did you come to meet him?
Actually, my introduction to Lucasfilm came in kind of an unusual manner. The general counsel of Lucas, subsequently the president of Lucasfilm, was someone who I spent 18 hours on 4 different trips driving from our hometown to college. And when you spend 18 hours straight, drive overnight with them, you either end up with people who you never want to see again or who become good friends, and he was a good friend. So I've never worked there, but I have represented the company as a corporate lawyer as an outside corporate lawyer for a number of years.
Was the acquisition here by Disney a long time in the making, or did it break relatively quickly?
There were discussions over this year, Spencer, and some of them were off and on, as these things often are. And then there was a sizable push during the last month to a month and a half before the transaction was signed.
Well, and you know, Kit, many people speculate that the transaction is all about estate planning, that George Lucas at age 68 wants to spare his heirs the responsibility of managing their inheritance. Was that the driving force behind this deal?
I don't think so. I think that George Lucas has expressed that he wanted to find a home for Lucasfilm that lasted longer than he might choose to work full-time, and picked Disney as very much the best place for Lucasfilm to reside. And I think he has publicly stated that he only spoke to Disney about the transaction and the possible transaction, and he thought this was a way that his legacy could continue. And I think he's also expressed that hiring Kathy Kennedy, who's really a renowned producer, to be his co-chairperson beforehand and to continue on the legacy was very much part of his plan. So a lot of things came together at the right time.
Well, and as you know, there is such fan loyalty and interest in the Star Wars franchise. And I know that the fans aren't stakeholders here, but did their interest factor in some small way into the deal, into the negotiations at all?
I think you'd have to ask George Lucas that. But I think he was very mindful and has articulated that he wanted the company to continue.
Was there anything unique about this particular deal? And George Lucas owns about 100% of the acquired company. Does that make the deal more or less challenging to execute?
Well, at the risk of sounding flippant, the answer is yes.
Okay.
In both cases, and maybe I could break it down. In a public deal, a public company sale, there is obviously the negotiation of an agreement. And there are, as you know, representations and warranties and things that go with that. But because of the nature of a public company and because the stock is held by so many people, those representations and warranties do not survive the closing. There's no indemnification that takes place. There's no contractual liabilities that survive the closing. So a public deal from a negotiation standpoint is often much easier in terms of negotiating the agreement because you only have up to the time the deal closes to worry about from a lawyer's perspective. In contrast, a private company all of these things, particularly where you have only one shareholder, can survive the closing, so the negotiation of the contracts involved may be much more difficult and more time-consuming because you have the freedom to make any kind of deal that you want. So a public deal is really an escape from freedom. In contrast, when you flip over to the execution part, the post-signing part, a public deal is more difficult because you need to either do tender offer documents or you need to do a proxy statement to get a vote of the shareholders to approve the transaction. That requires a filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission. And Spencer, as you well know, almost every public deal someone sues to at least allege that the process was incorrect or something else was incorrect.
Right,
so
that's right.
You have a lawsuit to deal with as well. So the beauty of a transaction like the Lucasfilm Disney deal is that once regulatory approvals are obtained, this deal can close automatically, quickly, and without a lot of fuss and lawsuits.
Do you have any expectation as to when the deal might close and you might get regulatory approval?
I think the aim is to get it done as fast as possible. I don't like to predict regulatory approval, particularly on a television show.
Understood. Well, I want to talk a little bit about the M&A team there at Latham. I understand that the firm is organizing itself around distinct business sectors. Can you talk a little bit about that and what's the strategy behind it?
Well, I think that's part of our organizational structure is, and I'll give you an example of the area that at least the three on this team have focused on, which is semiconductors. The Lucasfilm is more of a one-off for a movie studio.
You're the co-chair of the semiconductor industry group, correct?
Correct. And what we've tried to do is to focus on where we can add value through industry knowledge. We believe that in the semiconductor industry, we may do more semiconductor companies perhaps than any other law firm does. We represent companies like Advanced Micro Devices. We represented National Semiconductor in its sale. We represented Chartered Semiconductor Manufacturing, which was in Singapore. And we believe that through familiarity with what the issues are in a merger and acquisition involving a particular industry, we can add value by focusing on the right things and organizing ourselves in that manner. So that the semiconductor group is just one of the groups that we have. This is a recent development over the last 2 years, and we're trying to provide value to our clients through the in-depth industry knowledge that we may have in a given industry.
And so how has this reorganization, so to speak, affected your practice?
It really hasn't affected it substantially. I did a lot of semiconductor transactions previously, Spencer, and I think what it does do is it gives a focus for other people if they have a transaction involving a semiconductor company, for instance. They would know to come to one of our team to work on it, and they would get the proper industry expertise. So it's within the last 2 years, it's a new approach, and we're testing it out. But I already had a fair focus in my practice to begin with.
And so how else would you distinguish Latham's corporate practice from other law firms?
Well, I think that I might use the example of what took place at the time of the Lucasfilm Disney deal. The team who worked on that, the corporate partners, we did 3 transactions, 1 public and 2 private, and signed them within 2 days.
Wow.
And so there was a lot of activity. Latham and Watkins, having worked at another firm, I can say, has a culture of cooperation and an economic system that focuses and fosters cooperation. So we're able to call on people throughout the United States, throughout the world. Our system supports that, and we think it adds value in terms of getting a transaction done. So this team did work very hard during that period. We split things up and worked on different aspects of the transaction, but unlike the way some law firms are run, not only did we depend on a good culture, but the economic system and the rewards that go to the partners and the associates really foster cooperation, and we think it helps us a lot.
Fosters cooperation and efficiency. Thank you very much for joining us today, Kit. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Spencer.
For more information on this or other topics, subscribe to BloombergLaw.com. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for joining us. Bye, everybody.